How are we doing, folks? Your host Moose here on your home of Pitt Panthers football, the Pitt Panthers Football Network, back for our Around the NCAA recap of what happened in Week 4 in NCAA football. Of course, things started out fantastically. Your Pitt Panthers came away with a 58-55 victory. And it was a win that was in doubt for quite some time, really back and forth. Of course, the Panthers jumped out to an early lead. It went 21-14 at one point, 21-21 at halftime. The Panthers did have a lead going into the third quarter, but Oklahoma State rallied in the fourth quarter, leveled things up, and a late field goal forced overtime. And the teams traded touchdowns for the first two overtime periods until finally the Panthers came up with a big stop, forced Oklahoma State into a field goal, and Ben DiNucci sealed the victory with a 2-yard run. For the Panthers overall, they were unbelievable offensively. 615 yards of total offense. Obviously, they did have 75 of those yards in the overtime frame, but you take that away, they still had 550 yards total offense, 337 rushing yards, and 7 rushing touchdowns, which is unbelievable. 278 yards passing as well. They were 11 of 17 on third down, which was fantastic. Scored 6 touchdowns from being inside the red zone, and they controlled the ball for 27 minutes. You hate to think what Oklahoma State could have done to the Panthers offensively if they had the ball for longer, as they had 509 yards themselves, 424 yards through the air. So the Panthers definitely have to improve there, but they had plenty of turnovers created, which was good to see. Ben DiNucci had a very solid game for the Panthers, managed it well, and did run for 2 touchdowns. Quadri Olson was the hero, though. 155 yards rushing, 112 yards rushing for Quadri Henderson as well. 71 of those yards obviously on 1 carry, but he had 1 touchdown and was fantastic, and the Panthers did fantastically there. They spread the ball around to the receivers as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different guys catching passes. Chris Clark led the way, 6 catches for 74 yards and a touchdown. Great to see Jester Weah also have 5 catches for 91 yards as well, and finally start to have an impact in the passing game, much like he did last season. Defensively, Avonte Max led the way with 7 tackles, and you see it was a lot of defensive backs with the majority of the tackles because of the fact that Oklahoma State passed the ball for the majority of the game. But it was good to see freshman Kaiser Artis-Scott have such a good game. 2 tackles for a loss. No sacks for the Panthers, which is disappointing. Their first game without a sack, but 3 interceptions. Maddox, Hamlin, and Ford leading the way with those interceptions. Jay Bump did miss his first field goal attempt of the season from inside of 29 yards, but he made a 44-yarder as well, and he made all 7 extra points when they needed him to do so, which was fantastic. Ryan Winslow had 2 punts for 48 yards. Quadri Anderson did have 1 long kick return in the fourth quarter, which set up a scoring drive for the Panthers, so that was huge for them as well. For the Panthers, opponent Oklahoma State, Mason Rudolph, 424 yards passing, but those 3 interceptions were what crucially hurt him in this matchup. Jeff Carr, 46 yards on the ground. Justice Hill, 31 yards. Oklahoma probably should have ran a little bit more, as they did okay, but they were passing so well there was really no need to do so, and they were playing from behind for a majority of the game. Redwin Bryan with 6 catches, Johnson with 6 catches, McCluskey with 6 catches, Justice Hill with 6 catches. James Washington actually held in check, only 4 catches for 87 yards, but Mason Rudolph certainly had weapons all around the field. Whitener and Curry did very well for them as well. A couple of sacks on Ben DiNucci and an interception, or 2 interceptions I should say, but he scored when he needed to. He threw for 1 touchdown, ran for 2, and Quadri Olson, of course, the big hero of this game, 155 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. Just an unbelievable performance for him. Barr missed a kick as well for Oklahoma State, but it was a huge win for the Panthers, and one that, defensively they have a lot to work on, but offensively, after struggling, you would argue, for the first 2 games of this season against Rice and Penn State, this is something that they can build on moving forward here, and just hope that the defense can pick up the slack where the offense has been doing all the work and having to outscore teams. Hopefully the defense can win a few games coming forward here. But across the rest of the ACC, TCU obliterates Georgia Tech 35-7. Tulane improves to 3-0, beating Duke 42-18. Bowling Green 31-16 over Boston College. So not a good start for ACC teams this week. Miami did continue their winning ways, improving to 3-0, 31-21 win over Nebraska. Good performance from the Hurricanes there. Old Dominion beats Syracuse 17-10. So Syracuse beats Notre Dame, and then they lose to Old Dominion. So who knows what to think of there. Louisville 31, FIU 0. They improved to 3-0. Florida State obliterates North Carolina in an ACC matchup this week, 42-14. Clemson rocks Temple 59-3 to improve to 3-0, and BYU beats Virginia 38-17, improving to 4-0 on this young season through the BYU Cougars. Across the top 25, Texas with an obliteration of Kansas. Big rank game here. Penn State 31, Wisconsin 21. Wisconsin tried to mount a late comeback, but the Nittany Lions held them off. Saquon Barkley with a touchdown in that one. Of course, the TCU and Miami games we've already talked about. LSU 17-7, methodical over Kentucky. San Diego State 38, Air Force 33. Auburn wins to improve to 3-0. Texas A&M 48-7 with a blowout of Vanderbilt. Georgia 38, Ole Miss 10. Upset as Eastern Michigan wins 28-26 and is going to knock Houston from the ranks of the unbeaten. It's going to knock them out of the top 25. They actually were crushing them too. Houston 2 late touchdowns to try and come from behind. Bama 28-14 over Missouri. Tennessee beats Florida 13-10, a big rivalry game there. Ohio State obliterates Minnesota 56-13. Notre Dame beats number 8 Michigan at home. The Golden Domers jump out to an early lead behind 2 touchdowns from Torrey Hunter Jr. Deshaun Kaiser passes for 4 touchdowns and runs for a score to give the Golden Domers the victory in blowout fashion over Michigan. UCLA beats Utah. Tulsa with the other big upset of the week, 41-17 over Oklahoma. And the Sooners, after losing 1 game already this year, things have compounded and gotten worse for them. Tulsa 41-17 over the Sooners. The Golden Hurricane sweeping away the Sooners with a massive victory in this particular matchup. So that's a real statement win for the Golden Hurricane and a statement loss for Oklahoma here to show that they are really struggling on the season so far. Going to have to turn things around very, very quickly if they want any hopes of having a successful season. And so with those matchups, our players of the week in the NCAA, Jaquel Green for Texas San Antonio, 2 picks and a win over Western Kentucky. Luke Falk, 480 yards and 7 touchdowns. It must be something in the water over on the West Coast because these Pac-12 quarterbacks are having unbelievable weeks. Falk this week, Sam Darnold last week with absolutely massive performances. 7 touchdowns for Falk in this victory over Stanford. So just an unbelievable performance for this redshirt senior quarterback of the Cougars. In the ACC, Deshaun Watson stars, 5 touchdowns, 380 yards passing for Clemson, the victory over Temple. And for Miami, Trent Harris, 6 tackles for a loss, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble in a stout defensive effort when Miami beat Nebraska. So after those games and the big performances that we've seen, how does things shake out in the top 25? Clemson retains their position as number 1, and things stay the same all the way up to our position at number 7. We'll retain that with our victory over Oklahoma State. Texas A&M will move up to 8, Georgia to 9, and TCU into the top 10, owing to the fact that number 8, Michigan lost and is going to drop from their perch in the 8th position. TCU comes in at number 10. Baylor pops up to 11. Penn State now up to 12 with their win over Wisconsin. Louisville up to 13. UCLA 14. Michigan drops to 15, so that's where they fall after losing to Notre Dame, who you can see is going to come up to number 21 in the polls. Florida State 16, Tennessee 17, now a 5-spot jump. I think that's the biggest of the week other than people who weren't in the rankings last week. Wisconsin falls back to 19. Oklahoma State loses just 1 spot in the polls with their loss because it's tough to blame them losing in triple overtime to the number 7 team in the country. Notre Dame jumps into the polls here at 21. Washington's up to 20. Navy to 22, despite only having played 1 game so far this year, so they're going to have a lot of games coming up, I would think. San Diego State, we see Oklahoma drops all the way back to 24th, and I'm shocked they're even still in the rankings, to be honest, after that performance this week. Dropping out were Houston and Kansas State. So the big games coming up this week. First one, West Virginia heads to Austin to take on number 5 Texas. Herb Street has Texas win it, and we can't see it really going either way. There's actually not a ton of big games this week coming up, around the NCAA. There'll be a huge game in the ACC, but other than that, not a lot going on here. But West Virginia, not great. They have a fantastic passing attack that Dana Holgorsen, led by senior quarterback Will Grier, but Texas should have more than enough talent for them. The big ACC matchup is number 1 Clemson taking on number 6 Miami, having to go to Florida to take on the Hurricanes. Herb Street's got Clemson, and really we can't see it going any other way. Clemson's looked so dominant so far this year. They're 2nd in the country in scoring, 4th in the country in passing offense. Deshaun Watson has been unbelievable, and that Clemson defense has been as stout as ever. Number 8 in the country in total yards against. They've been fantastic. The only way we really see Miami winning is if they can, hold Deshaun Watson in check and force some turnovers. That's the one thing he's known for potentially doing, is throwing a couple of interceptions here and there, not taking care of the football. That's the only way we really see Miami winning. So I think Clemson takes this one. And the final matchup, obviously, your Pitt Panthers taking on the Miami of Ohio Redhawks. And really, there's no point really thinking about this matchup. The Panthers do have a long snapper potentially visiting for this matchup from Carnegie, so a local Pittsburgh product, hopefully going to sign after this week. But the Panthers, very stout rushing defense they've had this year. Their pass defense has really struggled, but Miami's pass offense is just as bad, so you'd expect the Panthers to turn things around in this matchup and use it as kind of a learning experience in ways that they can improve to hopefully get back to winning ways, owing to the fact that the Panthers next week following this Miami matchup will have to take on Clemson, so that'll be definitely a big matchup for them. But Miami, if we take a look at their schedule, they've beaten an FCS squad. That's where they got their victory, and since then they lost to Michigan 42-19, and then they went to Cincinnati and lost 24-10 before coming to Pitt to take on the Panthers now. So their quarterback Ball, 4 touchdowns, 3 picks, 356 yards on the season, only 110 in his last matchup. Went 15 of 35 in that loss to Cincinnati. Now Smith, decent runner, 67 yards in his last game. He's averaging about 74 yards in this particular matchup, but the big target clearly for Miami of Ohio is Murphy, 209 yards, 5 touchdowns. So you can clearly tell Miami's quarterbacks missed a couple of games, but 5 touchdowns for Murphy. So he's going to be the one guy the Panthers will need to shut down if they want to limit the passing attack of Miami of Ohio. So that's the guys to kind of keep an eye on in this one. For the Panthers, of course, Ben DiNucci just looks to continue to improve. Threw for 278 yards in this last matchup, a career high, and he did run for a couple of scores as well while throwing for 1 touchdown. So he's got 4 touchdowns, 3 picks on the season. Quadri Olson had an unbelievable performance, 155 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. He also caught 3 passes for 19 yards, so he's been fantastic this season. Chris Clark had 6 catches. He's the leading receiver, but you want to see if Jester Wea and any of the receivers can get themselves to be bigger players in the passing game for the Panthers, which they haven't done so far. The Panthers also really need to kind of shore things up defensively. Got to have a better passing defense. And in this one, we're really predicting the Panthers to have an easy time here, come away with an easy victory here. The final score we're predicting is Panthers 45, Miami of Ohio 14. I'm sure that with the way the Panthers defense has been playing, Miami of Ohio is going to get a score or 2, but we expect the Panthers to be a bit more resolute here, especially being at home, and the offense is going to have a field day, and so we're thinking 45-14 for your Panthers. So as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe for the next video where we take on Miami, and as always, we'll see you in the next episode, guys. Take care. We'll see you soon. Hail to Pitt. Bye-bye.